Social Security is not in crisis. What is happening is that the population's getting older, which means we've got more retirees per worker than we used to. We're going to have to make some modest adjustments in order to strengthen it.
So is the president right? Let's bring in our bulls and bears. We have Mike Norman, Ellen Karras, Liz McDonald, and Todd Wildman. And Ellen, I heard you give a guffaw with the president's announcement that there's no crisis.
That's the best punchline I have ever heard. First of all, if you go to a barbecue, you should put on an apron and start doing some souvlaki. Okay, that's first of all. That he went to someone's house and he didn't help. But I don't even know what he didn't even know what he was talking about. It was ridiculous.
Is that fair to say, Liz?
I think the president, I love Ellen, but I think the president does know what he's talking about. The question is, how is he defining modest? And does it mean that you means test benefits at age 55? You know, you pay out at 55, you know, and higher, that part of the constituency. And then do you start means testing? Do you raise the retirement age, as Congressman Paul Ryan has said, to age 70? That could be coming out in Paul Ryan's roadmap. The problem with Social Security, it's sort of like the weather. Everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it, according to Mark Twain. And so we've been here before. Ever since Social Security was launched in the 30s, there's been attempts to reform it. And, you know, so we're going to have more reform, and it probably means we're going to all have to retire later.
But, Todd, Social Security not being in a crisis, that's what the president says. What do you say?
Well, I'm a little bit worried about him saying that. Remember, if you go back to his address on Saturday, he also talked about Social Security and privatizing it. And he says, and I'll quote him from his speech, he said, why we need to be prudent about investing the retirement of money of tens of millions of Americans. He actually thinks we're investing Social Security money. We don't. We have already spent everything that's in the Social Security Trust Fund. We're on the hook for $2.1 trillion right now in IOUs in West Virginia to our Social Security Trust Fund. We have a major problem. We're running a deficit this year. 2 years ago, we borrowed $30 billion from the trust fund to spend on government services. We are in trouble, Mr. President. This is serious.
Mike, going back to the original question, the president said we are not in crisis mode for Social Security. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. There's absolutely no crisis. There's no solvency issue. It's impossible for there to be a solvency issue. I have David Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, saying that on an audio tape. Look, the government could pay any amount of money to anyone who it wants. The real issue here, and what we should be talking about, is whether or not the assets are going to be there for seniors in retirement to consume. That simply what that means, we need growth. If you have growth, all the problems of Social Security go away. The president, that's the part he doesn't understand,
Mike,
and that's the part that's going to doom the whole
Mike,
thing.
I hear what you're saying.
There's a bunch of ideologues who want to rip it down. It's worked for 75 years perfectly.
No, nobody wants to rip it down, please.
Yeah.
We're not going there. Nobody's saying rip it down. But for the amount of growth that you're talking about, according to economists who've studied it, these are actuaries who studied Social Security, you need 5 to 6, maybe 8% year annual growth to get it fully flushed.
By the way, point of order, Alan Simpson never said get rid of Social Security. You're absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong, but we have to get some information on the GM deal. Hold on. He did not say get rid of Social Security, but I do want to ask for your quick reaction, Mike, on GM. Will we get our money back? Will it ever get back up to $70 billion in market cap?
It back? Do we get some check or something like that? It was never. We never gave it.
If the government sells it into the market and gets $70 billion, that would be us getting our money back. Will that happen? Will that happen?
It'll go to 70. I'm very bullish on GM.
It'll take 18 years to get there.
Todd, do we get the money back when it goes public?
No, not in the foreseeable future.
Why? They're selling thousands and thousands of cars in China. They're doing extraordinarily well overseas.
They're doing great. I understand that, but we're talking about $60 billion that we've thrown down the rat hole of GM. We're not getting back $60 billion over the next 10 years. I'll bet you money right now.
Listen, you know something?
Hold on. Ellen, what do you think?
Yeah, I know. I actually do think that it's going to come back. I'm not quite sure about that 70 number, but I think like really long term, like 10 plus years at least. But I definitely think we'll get our money back.
You know,
Excuse me. So I think it could take, according to one analyst who looked at it and said, look, it could take 18 years based on the earnings growth of the company pre-crisis. It could take 18 years for the company to get back to 70 billion or whatever it owes. And this is a company that has faked its numbers and has been in very dire straits. It lost 10 billion. Hang on, it lost 10 billion bucks at the height of the bubble, Mike, and that's a fact. It lost $10.5 billion at the height of the bubble. We're talking about GM here. I don't know what company you're talking about here, and I don't think you've looked at the books of the company for a very long time.
Miss Know-it-all,
I'm not a know-it-all.
the Japanese for decades, have supported their auto industry. It's the reason why they've gained comparative advantage and
let's talk about Japan.
And Japan has been in a black hole for 10 years.
You want to know something? Well,
that's
not because of the auto
argumentative.
industry, which is doing very, very well. But
Okay.
Well, alrighty.
it's not a rat hole. It's not a black hole. It's a company that produces real assets that we need.
We like their Cadillacs. We love their Cadillacs.
I feel like I'm on The View.
I love their
I'm just
cars.
saying.
And you're going to get a Cadillac for all this, Mike Norman. Thank you very much. Well, from Social Security and GM to income taxes.
Well, a new twist in the debate about letting the Bush tax cuts expire. Wait till you hear who's for keeping them all in place, at least for now. Next. All this uncertainty and worry about higher costs for health care, one of the reasons companies might not be hiring. Let's bring back the bulls and bears. Ellen, is that a legitimate concern?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been saying this from day one. They don't know what to put into the calculation. They're not going to really know how much it's going to cost them until this thing comes in and takes
AT&T and Caterpillar did. They already had their write-downs that were specifically down to the dollar for SEC, to comply with SEC, and they could figure it out.
I just think that most companies still don't know, especially those medium-sized to small businesses, still really don't know what the effect is going to be. And I heard Obama today in his backyard barbecue, and he said how there was going to be an incentive because it was going to cost companies 1/3 less. Well, what about the other 2/3? I think it's a big unknown.
Todd, what do you think?
Well, it was funny because my representative, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, remember, said if we pass this health care reform bill, it's going to create jobs. It's going to create 400,000 almost immediately. 5 months later, I'm still looking for them. And I think the problem is because businesses are unsure what their long-term costs are going to be under this new health care regime that we have in the United States, especially over the next 2 years when we really start to see all the costs being shifted onto private companies and private insurance from all these people going on to Medicaid.
Mike Norman, to be fair, David and I interviewed the CEO of a company called Perkin-Elmer, which does diagnostic testing, which is a fancy way of saying we'll predict or we can figure out something before it becomes the worst possible point of health. They can detect parts per billion and all that. Their earnings are up. They're doing very well, and they are hiring.
Sure, and to Todd's point, healthcare was one of the only sectors of the economy that did add jobs in the last jobs report. Look, it has nothing, nominal costs always rise. Companies are always faced with nominal cost rise. This is about weak demand, a weak economy. That's why they're not hiring. And companies like Caterpillar, which you mentioned, which are seeing strong demand, but overseas, they're hiring people. The demand is weak here in the United States. If the economy came back strong, you'd see these companies hire. It's not about cost.
Right, but EMAC, of course, medical companies are hiring because they know the taxpayer is going to be bailing out all the medical costs.
Yeah, essentially they're footing the bill for the cost. But, it's interesting. I'm seeing disclosures. For example, UPS said the retiree medical drug benefit, retiree Medicare drug benefit, it won't have a material impact on their earnings. That was the part that everybody said, wait, AT&T Caterpillar's disclosing these costs. And now UPS saying no. And so I think it depends on the sector. It's going to go from company to company as health reform rolls out. We're going to see differences from company to company.
But you can't deny companies are gun shy. They don't know how much it's going to cost to pay for health care for each employee.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of paying and getting and spending and buying, it's Who Made Money today. You're going to like this one to start. Female inmates in California's San Mateo jail. Yes, making money. They're taking on the competition in the jailhouse kitchen, David. 4 teams of women battle with batter in this Iron Chef-style culinary contest. These are they. Here they are.
Of shivs.
Cooking is one of the skills the prisoners can learn while they serve out their sentences, and these women are winning way beyond the jail's bars. In 3 years, none of these women who have participated in the competitive cooking competition have returned to jail.
Mike, would you like to describe what a shiv is?
It's a prison term for a knife. The winner gets a new set of shivs.
How do you know that?
Bon appetit.
I'm off on my trivia.
He's scared.
What can I tell you?
Let's hope.
All right, just make sure
Was a
you stick
Jeopardy
a few things
question.
into the cake before you eat it. We round out our show today with what you need to